Hi Bloomers, it's Wendy. Welcome to another episode of Bloom with Flores. I'm truly honored to have you join us today. We've got a very special episode lined up, and it's one that delves into a topic that many find difficult to discuss, but is incredibly important. Today, I'm joined by Anika, a courageous individual who has graciously agreed to share her story with us. In this heartfelt conversation, we'll be exploring the profound and often challenging journey of coping with stillbirth. Anika's openness and strength in sharing her experiences will undoubtedly provide valuable insights and support to those who may have gone through a similar situation or want to understand more about this deeply sensitive topic. So whether you're here to seek comfort, understand, or simply to learn more, I encourage you to stay tuned. Hi, Anika. As I mentioned in my intro, I'm really honored to have you on our podcast today. I'd like to emphasize that this is a safe space for our discussion, and we're here to honor your Hayden and discuss your experience with stillbirth. Feel free to introduce yourself to our audience and maybe provide a little bit of background on the motivation to openly discussing your story today.
Hi, Wendy. Thanks so much for having me today. So my son was stillborn on June 26th, 2021. And one of the main reasons why I was so interested in joining you today was to really just talk about what stillbirth is and how it impacts moms and dads, future siblings, friends and families, and what that experience is like overall. Because I think, and what I learned is that in our society, it's not something that's often spoken about. And there's a lot of miseducation around it, specifically like sometimes confusion between a miscarriage versus a stillbirth. A lot of people just don't know. They don't know what to say because they've never heard about it, or they think it's a touchy subject, so they don't want to bring it up. So yeah, I'm hoping today by the end of this discussion, I can shed a little bit of light on all of that.
Can you take us back to the very beginning and how you found out you were pregnant?
Yeah, so it was December 2020, so COVID year to add to it. And
COVID baby.
Yeah, sort of COVID baby. We had been trying for a bit to expand our family. And it wasn't really happening that fast, which, everyone was like, oh, it's okay, just keep waiting. We did kind of look into the possibility of maybe going down the path of like possibly seeing, okay, is there any issues? Is there a reason why? But I don't know, in the medical community, it's very big on, oh, you got to wait a year. Like that's just their gold standard. And so I guess we were kind of approaching that year mark, and it was December 20th. So it was 4 days before Christmas. And then I found out I was pregnant. I was very surprised in a good way. And it was just like the best feeling because we felt like we had been waiting for this for so long and we had been trying. And I think most people just love Christmas and the season of Christmas and the hope and the joy that it brings. So it was just so aligned with that as well. We were ready to like surprise our parents on Christmas Day and do all that cute stuff that, we always wanted to do in our hearts. And we were blessed to be given that opportunity to actually do it. But yeah, it was pretty much Christmas 2020. And we felt like with COVID and it being such a tough year, that it was just such a nice way to end the year off. Yeah.
I'm sure there was a lot of prepping and maybe gender reveal and that kind of stuff. Do you want to share some of that with us?
So gender reveal, I'll start there. So what we did was April 2021. Because of COVID, we didn't have like a big party because 2021, there was still restrictions and limitations on crowds. So what we did instead was just with our immediate family. And I have two nephews and my husband has a nephew as well. So we did like an Easter egg hunt for the kids. And then
Cute.
inside of the plastic egg was either a blue chocolate or a pink chocolate, depending on the gender. So I had entrusted one of our friends with the results. And so he put together the eggs for us and then gave it to us before Easter so we can do the egg hunt. And then a bonus part to that is that we chose to, because we had a lot of friends and family that, because they couldn't physically be there with us, but they still wanted to participate. So we decided to have like a gender 50-50 draw charity type thing. So you either bought tickets for a boy or a girl, and then depending on what it was, everybody got put into a hat. And then the money we raised was donated to Sunnybrook's NICU, which is where one of my cousins, they had a premature baby born there. And so it was just a really, even though it wasn't my child, it was a very, we hold that hospital and their NICU to a really high standard.
Right.
And we were very appreciative for everything that they did for my cousin's son. So it was just a no-brainer that we wanted to kind of connect the two. So yeah, we did a special gender reveal and the charity draw. And then that's how everybody found out we were having a boy.
It was a very happy time for you and your husband,
Yeah.
Whom I've known for a very long time. Can you share the details of what happened the day of your appointment?
I just went into the clinic for a routine checkup. So at this point, I was 32 weeks pregnant, which is 7.5 months. And then at the clinic, I guess after a certain week of gestation, they just start using the Doppler to just hear the heartbeat. And so they were struggling to find the heartbeat. And I honestly, I wasn't worried because I just thought, oh, it's just the machine, right? And then they were really trying, and then she had to bring somebody else in, and then they were trying, and then they said, okay, they were going to try in a different machine. And then that's when I started to like worry, because the second machine, which is supposed to be more sensitive, couldn't find the heartbeat either. So at that point, their protocol is you have to go to the hospital. And so the hospital that I was scheduled to deliver with for my son was Markham Stouffville. So yeah, so right away I called my husband, who was at work, and I said, okay, like this is what they're saying. And so he dropped what he was doing and he came to pick me up. And yeah, we drove straight to the hospital, and then we went there and they put us in a room, and we had to wait a while because they're waiting for an OB to come in with like a bedside ultrasound. And so I would say maybe we were waiting in that room for like over an hour at least, right? And they kept apologizing. But again, I was like, no, there must be like,
Right.
there must be.
You were still very optimistic.
Yeah, right. And then yeah, the OB came in, and then she brought the bedside ultrasound, and then yeah, she said like, I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat, right? And so we were just both, me and my husband were just lost for words. And then more so, and it was really nice of her. She was trying to be so respectful, but also because she could, I guess, sadly, it's probably not her first time she's had to do this. So she was trying to explain to us that there's other signs like she could see in the ultrasound to, like, for example, the water in the sac, she's like, it was very low.
Depleted?
Yeah. So she's like, those are additional signs that like the baby has demised. You know, because we could just be like, oh, maybe you're not seeing the heartbeat, right? But she was trying to tell us like, trust me, like this is not like, I'm not making this up, right? And so at that point they right away, they just said, okay, we're going to leave the room and we're going to give you guys some time, and then we'll come back in a bit and we'll go over like what the plan is after that fact. So
what were some of the emotions that you were going through at the time? I know you were
like, just, it's like, it's complete disbelief and obviously sadness, right? So you're just like, what? Like, how can that be? How could that happen? I know for me personally, before my experience, I had heard of stillbirth, but again, because I wasn't educated, I don't know why I was under the impression that it would happen either during the birthing process, right? So like while you're delivering, maybe something happens to the baby, or you would have like some sort of symptom or like a risk factor. You would be considered a high risk patient for this. And so there would be some sort of warning. Like, I don't know if that's the right word. There was nothing. It was just, there's no heartbeat. I'm sorry, he's gone. And
previous to that, the baby had been very active.
Yeah, according to like our standard medical care, like what they offer for pregnant women, he checked off all those items, right? All the ultrasounds and everything. So there was no reason for them to have any concern for me. And yeah, we were just so sad and so numb, like just so, yeah, it was really tough.
Did you find solace in each other?
For sure. Like in that moment, yeah, for sure. There was no like anger or resentment towards each other, but it was just like indescribable, like sadness. You just couldn't, like, there was no like emotions. You're just numb. Like, you were sad and you were numb.
So now you're at the hospital. Okay. And now the doctors have come in.
Yeah.
What did they say to you at that moment? I know everything at the hospital is like a process and procedure.
Yeah.
Walk us through that.
Yeah. So basically, what they said afterwards is the next step is labor and delivery, right? Which I was terrified to hear. And in theory, I guess now looking back, it's like, well, of course, like the baby has to come out, right? But you don't ever think, at least I never thought of my first experience with labor and delivery to be like essentially a dead baby, right? So that was, I don't know if terrifying's the word. It's just, it's sickening. You're just like, I can't believe anyone has to go through that, right? Like I couldn't understand that, but basically, yeah, they had to walk us through labor and delivery, and basically they said we had time to go home and come back in the morning because they didn't see any signs that would risk, because at that point, once the baby has passed away, there is a risk to the mom with toxicity and that type of stuff, and they didn't see any immediate concern. And so they said, if you want to take a few like hours in the night and come back first thing in the morning, that's fine. And especially because we had a dog, we wanted to get back so we could make arrangements for her. Like, we didn't have any idea that this would happen. Right. And so, yeah, there's really no time to, like, I don't think anybody could prepare. It's just, yeah, you're just thrown right in right away. It's just go home, pack a bag, and come back in the morning. And so, yeah, we came home, and then we just had to like call our parents and like our close friends and let them know. And yeah, that night like sleeping was non-existent. It was just like torture, right? Because you knew what the morning had to bring. And I vividly remember that morning before we went to the hospital. I just went to Starbucks. I don't even know why, just to get like an iced tea. I think I drank like 2 sips of it. But when I went in, the barista so innocently was like, "Have a great day," right? And it's just like, no, it's not going to be a great day, right?
So you wait till the next morning. You and Harim get ready to go to the hospital. I'm sure it felt like a long drive to the hospital. You get to the hospital, and again, you have to go through a process and procedure. Walk us through that. Yeah.
So it was interesting because so the first thing is, when you are scheduled, when they know there's a patient coming in for a stillbirth, most hospitals in Canada, what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to have your room just like as private as possible, away from any active like labor and deliveries with live births, just out of respect for the parents. And you're also supposed to put like a picture on the door. So it could be a picture of one of, I don't know, 3 or 4 things. And so in our case, it was a lamb. And what it does is it just signals to any nurse or doctor entering the room or walking by to understand that like a baby has passed away there. So you just have to be really respectful if you are in the room or walking by the room. So yeah, they walked us to this room all the way at the back away from everybody else. It had like double doors pretty much. So you walked in one door, it closed, and then another door. So it was really, really private. And then again, just a lot of waiting because the OB on call had to come, and then basically they had to like start inducing labor. So because it was my first pregnancy and first labor and delivery, and because I was only 32 weeks, physically like your body's not anticipating delivery. So even for an induction, they can't, I guess the common thing is like, is it oxytocin that they administer? Yeah. So they can't give that right away until you're a certain amount of, you're certain dilated. Yeah. So they had to administer, it was a different medication that's supposed to help your body dilate.
Right, because you're not in delivery at
exactly.
all.
And so they check,
labor.
right? Because they're like, we already know you're probably not dilated, but we'll just check. And so the OB's like, yeah, you're completely not dilated. So I don't know why, but it's not something they can administer through the IV. So it has to, it's like a suppository sort of thing, vaginally. So one of the nurses comes every few hours and would just administer it for me. And then, and then we just didn't know how long it was going to take because it had to go to a certain amount before they can administer the oxytocin.
Okay. So you gave birth. And did you have time with your baby? Did you hold your baby?
Yeah. So originally when so what happened was the whole labor and delivery process was about 2.5 days because the first 2 days, pretty much, it was taking so long. And then by the time they did finally administer the oxytocin, they thought, oh, it'll probably take a little longer. No, he showed up in like 45 minutes of administering that. So I didn't even have time for an epidural because it just progressed so quickly. And because he had already demised, and I understand the doctors, they have to, like medically, they have to explain everything, right? But it's also like scary for us because we didn't know what to expect or who, like what is he going to look like, right? And so basically they had warned us that there could be like when the baby, because when they lose the amniotic fluid and all that stuff, they start to change. So I think that's why I didn't know what I wanted to do because, and how could you, until you go through that, like how could you preemptively make those decisions? And the nurses are so respectful because I think that often happens where people don't know if they want to. So what they do is they, after the, like in our case, when our son was born or when any baby's still born, they take him or her and they weigh him, and there is like a little cot in the room and they wrap him and they leave him there. And then when you're ready, you can ask like to hold him. So in our case, because I was still like on the bed, my husband's the one that went over and looked because I didn't know yet, right, what I wanted or exactly. And so he looked and then he was like, oh, he's so cute. So then I was like, oh, is he? So then I told our like nurse, I'm like, okay, like when you're ready, like I'd like to see him and hold him, right? But again, because he was so even though he was born at 32 weeks, he had been demising before, but we just didn't know. So he was also on the smaller side. So they'd like double wrapped him just to give him more body, like for us to be able to hold him. But yeah, we did hold him, and we got to spend some time with him. We each took a picture with him, and we took pictures of him. And they don't rush you at all. They're like, you can spend as much time as you want. But after a few hours, it's kind of, I don't know, for us personally, it was just like, okay, we're ready to leave. Like we need to just, for like our sanity, just leave this room. And so, yeah. And it's weird because you leave without your child, right? You, and there's all this paperwork for, like cremation and funeral, whatever you choose. So you have to make sure that's all done. And then the biggest thing is with like stillbirth, and what all moms who have experienced it say, is that you leave with a box, not a child. They have these like pre-made little memory boxes. So they give you footprints of the baby and little like a little hat and stuff that they dress them up in, but they let you keep it. Usually it's what's been donated from previous patients or donors of the hospital. But yeah, it's very different, right? Because you go through all the motions of delivering, but then the end result is just completely different.
So did you stay at the hospital the night, or did you come home immediately after?
So in my case, because I didn't have any complications with the delivery, I was able to go home pretty much right away. They're like, if you're ready to go, you can go. And so I think he was delivered at, let's say, like 12:15 p.m. around that time. And I think by the time we got into the car to go home, it was about like 6:30 at night. So like it felt longer, but I guess it all moved pretty quickly. Pretty quick.
So you mentioned the healthcare team and how good they were. What were some of the good memories that you have, maybe an experience you had with a nurse or the doctor that made this kind of a lot less heavy for you? And
they were just all so empathetic and so kind with how they were explaining everything, and always telling us like, if you need time, it's not a rush. Like even with certain paperwork and things, they were all really, really great. And even the nurses, some of them would like come and just sit and talk with us, right, for like an hour, anything just to like get our minds off of it for a little bit. And it didn't always have to be like a heavy conversation, even if we were just talking about like a show or a sitcom or something that we liked. They were all just really, really kind. Like I didn't find anybody insensitive or rushing us. At least in our situation, I think other people may have had experiences like that, but we didn't, thankfully.
And how did you say your farewells to Hayden? Was it at the hospital?
Yeah, no, at the hospital. We just, he was just in his little cot, right? So, you just kind of give him a hug and a kiss and you say bye. But it's weird because you don't like, I think most people with like, especially with living children, it kind of doesn't ever feel natural until maybe a few weeks in or a few months in. And this is like, you've only been given a few hours and already the situation is so different because the child's not living, right? So it's like you're saying goodbye to somebody before you even really got to know them.
Right.
And it's just, it's a weird disconnect. Like, you know, it's your child, but then also like for your mental health, you're trying to kind of cope and like make some sort of separation to like, okay, maybe this will make me feel better, right? But yeah, I don't know. It's a very strange thing to describe. Yeah. And I always, even to this day, say like, even the way they asked us for like for naming him, you don't feel like you're naming a child. It's basically more for legal documents for the funeral home. And so even that process, for the longest time, we didn't realize, like, we knew his name was Hayden, like, because in my husband's side of the family, they have a generational tradition, where the first name of the males is Joseph, right? So even that, like on his urn and stuff, it says Joseph, which is not wrong, that's his first name. But the way you fill out the forms, it's like you don't realize you're naming a child, like your child.
Right.
It seems more administrative, like, okay, we have to just document
Paperwork
that,
almost.
like human remains are passing through, right? So even in Ontario, it's strange. So you don't get a birth certificate. I know some countries for stillbirths you do, but in Canada you don't. But you do get a death certificate from the funeral home.
Okay.
Again, just for legal reasons, to show that they touched like human remains. I think they have to show some
There's
sort
a
of
record.
Yeah. But it's like in no other instance, when would that happen where you get a death certificate but not a birth certificate? So that is really confusing.
Yeah.
Like when you're already grieving and you're going through all the emotions. Now we can really like reflect on it and we know better, but in that moment it was very confusing.
It's all new.
We didn't really understand what we were doing. So
You touched on the grieving. How did you give your permission to yourself to grieve when you're dealing with the outside world?
So I think, so the first thing is, so I did take maternity leave. So when you have a stillbirth, you are legally entitled to the first portion, which is the 15 weeks maternity, which is what the government and most companies give.
Okay.
And then extended is the parental. So you're not given the parental portion with the stillbirth, but you are entitled to the maternal portion.
Okay.
So that was a no-brainer that I was going to take at least the full 15 weeks so that I could start to figure out like how I feel and how life's going to be. So that helped for the most immediate part, and at least you don't have to worry about going to work and that sort of stuff, even though there is still a little bit of administration where you have to like contact Service Canada, and then because the way my maternity leave was supposed to be, it was supposed to be in August of that year, and then he was born end of June, so everything had to be kind of pushed up, right? So yeah, I just definitely took the time to myself, and my husband took some time off work too, and we just were home with our dog, tried to like get to things around the house that we haven't had time to do. And I don't know. There was nothing concrete that I said, oh, I'm going to do this. This is going to help me, because I didn't know. What ended up ultimately helping me the most, looking back, is actually connecting with other lost moms, mostly through social media. I just started to find these accounts where most of them were started by moms who had had stillbirths, whether it be their first, second, or third child. And it was just this community. And then when you found one, you found the other, and you found the other. And so I felt heard and seen once I found those accounts, and just things they would post. It was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly how I feel without saying those words. So reaching out to those women and having conversations, that definitely did help
with
me with grieving and healing in that regard. But I also did ultimately, so I did go back to work after the 15 weeks, and it was fine for a few months. But then, because I didn't do any formal counseling or therapy, even though it was recommended of me to do it, I didn't think about doing it at the time. I think all those feelings caught up to me. And so after a few months, I did end up taking some time off work, just because I felt like I needed to dive deeper into it, and I needed to come to terms with everything and actually do some therapy and some counseling, so that definitely helped a
It's
ton.
helped you a lot.
But I think everybody has to come to that like decision on your own time.
Yes.
And so for me, it just took a little bit longer. Thankfully, not too long, because I think that's could be dangerous if you wait too long. But yeah, it was a combination of just these other incredible moms that I met through social media, and then counseling, and then yeah, like our closest family and friends and each other. Like if I had to go through this with any other partner, I don't know how it would be, but I was lucky that my current partner we could talk
great
about
support.
anything. Yeah. It wasn't like I had to hide my feelings or anything.
So in the aftermath, did you encounter any misconceptions or misunderstandings from others about stillbirth that you wish people were more aware of?
Yeah, for sure. And I didn't realize I didn't realize why certain things were bothering me until, and that's why these other lost moms that I connected with helped me so much to like navigate my feelings, because there were certain things and people that were starting to rub me the wrong way, and I didn't know why, because these were all like normally people that I love and I get along with great. But I couldn't, and I know they're great people, but I couldn't understand like, why is it rubbing me the wrong way? Why are they bothering me? And that's when I realized it's because, yeah, there is a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings out there. So I think the biggest one is that people just don't want to talk about it. So when I say that, obviously, I don't expect anybody to walk up to me and ask me details of like, oh, so I heard your son was stillborn, all that stuff. But just the simple acknowledgement of, hey, you had a kid, he passed away, I'm really sorry, right? Even if you don't know what to say past that, just a simple condolence was like, it meant the world to us.
Yes.
Because there were people who, with like any pregnancy, where everyone was like, oh, congratulations, we're so happy for you guys. And then after our son passed away, they just never really reached out for their own reasons. And not that they were doing it maliciously, but they thought, like, I know, for example, some people thought, oh, we don't want to bring it up. Like, we don't want to make you sad, right?
Or uncomfortable.
Exactly. But it's like, well, when you lose a child, or anybody really, a parent, a grandparent, you're not going to make somebody more sadder than they already are, right? If anything, it's just a reminder that that person like existed, and you're validating, especially when it comes to children. And so in our case, prior to our son, we didn't have any living children, right? So that's the other misconception, was that, oh, well, if you don't have a physical child living at home, then you're not a parent, right? You're not a mom, you're not a dad, right? When really, no, we are parents. We're just now in this different category of parents where our child has passed away, right? So I think those were the two biggest misconceptions, was that people didn't want to acknowledge us as parents. They thought they would upset us by bringing up anything about our son. And I think too, I think I could be wrong, but what I started to notice mostly amongst women and other moms is that I think in North America, the most common form of baby loss is a miscarriage. And normally that happens prior to 12 weeks,
Right.
when most people have chosen to keep the pregnancy private. They haven't shared. So it's usually just them and their partner, maybe a couple family members. So nobody even knows, right? And so they keep it quiet regardless, because nobody knows. Some people, for sure, they share, and they have every right to if they want to be open about it, but typically most women don't. And I found I was getting grouped into that category of a miscarriage versus a stillbirth. And I haven't met any mom who's had a stillbirth that doesn't want their child spoken about or acknowledged. I've met women who have had miscarriages where it's split. So some women, they don't want to talk about it, which is totally fine. It's everybody's decision. And then there are some women who do want to talk about it and who acknowledge their babies, and they say, oh, my angel baby 1 or 2 or whatever. They give it a name or a term, and that's fine too. But I find most of the time it's not consistent when it comes to miscarriages and how women and fathers choose to talk about it moving forward. But with stillbirths, I can say this whole 100%, I haven't met anybody who has never ever acknowledged that they had a child and they were stillborn. They always want their child to be remembered and to be acknowledged. So that would be the number 3 biggest misconception, that I've experienced.
And what's your perspective on life now, Nika? I know things have changed. And we'll get into now the dynamic of your family and what it looks like now.
Yeah.
But when it was happening at the time, what was your perspective? Were you ever angry, or I'm sure?
Oh yeah, for sure. You're so angry, and especially you just see women and parents who mistreat their bodies so harshly, and who don't take care of themselves, and they just have babies no problem, right? They don't have any issues, and so you feel a lot of resentment, because you're like, well, why do they get to have their kids and how come I don't get to have mine? And I think too, it just reframes your whole the way your mind is wired, because you look at life so differently. You know that anything can be taken from you in an instant, and also there's just more important things at hand. You can't fuss about the little things anymore, but you're also really, at least I became really protective with my space and who I let back into that space, because sometimes there was this assumption that if you were close to me before I lost my son, then automatically you're close to me after. But to me, I was a completely different person. And so all of my relationships had to be rebuilt, essentially. It was almost like if you wanted to be part of this sacred space and this life now, you have to kind of show me why, right? Why are you worthy to be a part of it? Because I felt like not everybody was deserving to have access to us anymore, and to the memory of our son. And it completely shifted the way we looked at relationships and the world just overall.
So your relationships were impacted.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So how can we as a society create a more supportive environment for individuals and families dealing with stillbirth? And what changes, if any, would you like to see?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest thing, which I don't think people necessarily have control over, I think there's a huge gap in our medical system. So anybody who's gone through a pregnancy would know or remember that after your 20-week anatomy scan, you're usually not given another ultrasound unless you're high risk or there's a reason for concern. And usually after 20 weeks is when stillbirths happen. That is what defines a stillbirth, when you're after 20 weeks. So to me, it's why can't we increase the monitoring for every pregnant person should be treated as high risk, right? Because why do you wait till something bad happens to then say, oh, next time we're gonna monitor you more closely, right? It can happen to anybody. So why not just give every mom that extra monitoring, right?
Mm-hmm. So I think is it 20 weeks that you are seeing your OB more frequently?
You are, yeah. But they wouldn't be able to, I think when you see your OB, they would just be doing cervical checks or just basing on your symptoms. You're not actually getting ultrasounds,
right? And
more specifically detailed ultrasounds that are showing blood flow to the placenta and okay, how big is the baby in relation to the placenta? It gets very detailed, and it's very simple signs that can be a red flag before things demise, to just say hey, this could be a risk factor. We need to keep an eye on things. So, yeah, I would say in a perfect world, I would love for the medical system to just be improved so that there's just a little bit more monitoring after 20 weeks. And then I think if that could happen, then it would just inevitably become more discussed,
Right.
because otherwise it's just this thing where, so what I also have found is that a lot of women, they end up having their baby and they wouldn't have even known there could have been a risk because nobody was checking, right? In that sense, it is kind of just luck of the draw that things just worked out and their baby was born, right? Versus like if you were monitoring them, you might be more educated to know that actually this was happening with my baby, or
Right.
that was happening. So then I think once we as women realize like, hey, it's actually pretty, like it can be complex for a lot of people, not just like one or two, then it becomes just more of a common conversation, right? That people are more open to talking about. But I think I don't know, it's hard to say like with friends and family and just the general public. I think the one thing is if you ever think about stillbirth or you know somebody that's had a stillbirth, I would just say relate it as if it was like their grandma or grandpa who passed away or their pet, right?
Yes.
You would never not acknowledge that. You would say something to them to give your condolences. And more so like even in our extended family, who we've had friends whose parents have passed away or grandparents, and sometimes at the dinner table we'll reminisce on a memory of those people, right? So it's the same way where it's like anybody who's passed away. If you can feel okay talking about somebody's grandparent or parent or sibling, or reminiscing on a memory, it's no different to like a parent who's lost a child. That's how they feel about their child too. But I understand it's different in the sense because the parents, like we are the only ones who met our son, nobody else met him. So in terms of reminiscing on memories and things like that, it's a little different. But just the simple act of like, hey, I saw this today and it made me think of
An
your son.
acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though I never met him.
Or I'm
like,
thinking of you. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Just any form of acknowledgement to keep their memory alive. Because at the end of the day, you want to feel that they mattered, right? And especially for us, like I can't speak for other parents, but when it's your first child and your first pregnancy, you never want to feel like it didn't matter, right? Or that it was like all for nothing. You want to make sure that, hey, no, like he matters and he's remembered, and I know you didn't meet him, but I've even had like friends who have asked like, oh, do you have pictures of him? Like, would you be willing to share? And those are actually great questions, but we're not ready yet. But I think it was so nice that people have asked, right? And if they continue to ask, that's great too. Like I would say, if you ever want to, don't be afraid to.
Yeah.
And just respect whatever the parents' decision is, right? Whether they say yes or no. But yeah, even just little things like that. Even there, like for us, I love like his birthday, right? Like we have friends with lots of kids and we try for the most part to remember all their birthdays. And so when anybody can remember his birthday, like it makes us really happy, right?
Yes.
That somebody, especially a parent who has a kid or kids, that they would remember his birthday. That's like, well, any parent would want that,
course.
right?
Of course. You mentioned that there's support groups on Facebook that you are part of. Was there anything else, any resources that you found helpful?
There is. So I know Sunnybrook offers like a weekly online support group where it's different types of lost parents, and you can join like virtually, and they offer counseling, and so that's really great that we have access to that. I didn't go down that route. I just went with a private like therapist just because I'm lucky, like we have benefits at work and stuff. But if you didn't, it's all free resources. But it's hard to say too because everybody's like journey could be so different. So for me, I just feel like, yeah, definitely social media, like I have a love-hate relationship with it. But when it came to like these lost moms, like, and they're all over the world. Like there's one in Australia, there's a few in the States, there's some in Canada, there's one in Bowmanville. Like it's just crazy how you could be so far away from people, but then have so much in common.
It's so close.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, what does your family look like now?
So now we have a living child. So we have our daughter, Harper, who is 7 months old.
Congratulations.
And, thank you. And yeah, and that's the other thing too. We always like have to, it's interesting because it's been great having her, but now we're part of this different category of parenting where you have a living child and a sibling for her that's passed away, right?
Yes.
And because she's our only living child, we always get asked the question, is she your only one? Like, do you have any more kids? And so usually like I answer the question honestly, and I'll just say, no, we actually had a son and he was stillborn in 2021. And it's always interesting people's responses.
Reactions.
Yeah. There's some people who will say, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. I had one lady actually ask me what was his name. And that just like made me so happy.
Yes.
But then some people just give you like the awkward, like, oh, okay. Like, and then right away just want to change the conversation. It can actually, like, if you can find humor in it, it's pretty funny. Like some people, because they get so uncomfortable what their mind goes to. Like I had one person once, when I told him that, he was like, oh, well, I actually just had a son. He's 3 months old. And in my head, I'm thinking that's probably not the most like sensitive thing to say, but I was okay. Like I didn't take it the wrong way. I know it's human nature. Like he was clearly uncomfortable. And I said I lost a son and he just had a son. So he just jumped to that topic. But yeah, so it's different because even that, like, we're so happy and people are obviously so happy for us, but it comes with its own challenges, and it's still very different for us because she'll always be a younger sibling, but her older brother's not here. And so for people who just see her on the street, they just think she's an only child, right? And also trying to balance, like when it comes to her birthdays and special milestones, like we never want to forget Hayden, but we never want to take away from her occasions. And so just making sure that she could be her own person as she grows up, and that we're not like overshadowing anything of hers that, oh, because we lost your brother. Like we'll have to navigate that once it comes to that.
You will be speaking to her about her brother.
Oh yeah, definitely. One of her like storybooks in her book collection is My Brother Lives in Heaven, which was written by a mom whose son was stillborn. And oh yeah, we'll tell her all about him. But for now, yeah, these are just things we want to do as parents for her as she grows up. We're already starting to think about how we're going to handle those conversations and make sure that her birthdays and her special events are just for her.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Anika, thank you for your bravery today. It's individuals like you who remind us of the power of authenticity and the importance of embracing our true selves. It's stories like these that give names to the nameless, faces to the faceless, and voices to the silent. And his name was?
Hayden.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As we come to the end of today's episode, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to Anika, who courageously shared her journey through stillbirth. Opening up about such a deeply personal experience is truly significant, highlighting the comfort and solidarity these conversations bring to those treading similar paths. Anika, your bravery is a beacon of strength, and we appreciate you. We love to hear your stories. Feel free to share your personal journeys in the comments or via our social media channel. Your stories inspire us and help us grow together as a community of bloomers. Stay tuned for more content, and until next time, keep blooming.